Hello, my name is Shane Wymer, and I'm interviewing my father here, Troy D. Wymer, author of several science fiction novels. What inspired you to write fiction?
Um, I was inspired by a lot of different science fiction stories growing up. A lot of movies and books that came out during the late 70s, early 80s. But I like to create different worlds and settings and characters on a galactic scale. And to be able to create something and have somebody else enjoy it is really worth it for me. My grandma Weaver also was a writer. She wrote the book The Emperor's Gift, which I actually just recently read again. So
How was that?
it was good.
That's good. I'll have to read it. How many books do you have published right now?
I have 5 books total. The first 3 books are in Light Years trilogy. And then the 4th one is Treasures from Afar. And my latest one, which is the first book of a duology, is called Xenotrist. Now this is an erotic space opera. And this is kind of Galactic Empire-ish. This is also kind of Galactic Empire-ish as far as like a subgenre would go. But yeah.
Nice. So who do you use for a publisher?
I'm self-published and I go through BookBaby for my publishing, and I use the imprint WymerNovels for my publishing name where it's applicable.
Okay. Nice.
And that's basically everything I do is got the WymerNovels imprint on it.
Awesome.
Website and social media and stuff.
And what genre do you usually write in?
Like I mentioned, science fiction, space opera, and that's probably what I'll continue to do. Even if I want like a mystery or a fantasy, it'll generally always be on the space opera subgenre, because I enjoy doing it on a galactic scale. It has your typical space opera stories with galactic scale and melodramatic characters and space travel between planets and so forth.
Vast worlds. That's pretty awesome. And I was curious, is there any part of your stories that make you emotional?
There is. When I am reading the end of Light Years 2, Intergalactic Terrorism, where the character Tarina goes back in time to see her parents and hands her mom a note, it gets me every time. I don't know if it's just the way the story is or if part of it has to do with the backstory for the character Tarina was inspired by my cousin Heidi, who had died. And I sought advice from her on a backstory for that character, and to have that character kind of go back in time, it just, I don't know what brings out the emotion, if it's just the story or the connection with my cousin.
And what are a couple elements of your writing style that you would like to share?
I like to. Originally for Light Years, I wrote what's called pantster style, where you just kind of write as it comes to you. So the story can kind of go in its own direction as you go on. And then starting with Treasures from Afar, I changed to a plotter style where it's organized, you have an outline, and you follow it to the T. And I think for me that works out better. But in the stories, I like to mention something, and then like way later, I'll do something that connects it, and the audience will go, "Oh, I get the connection." Just something that is left unknown, and then later on, you make that connection for the reader. So, for instance, Light Years, it leaves a character as a dead end, like like a loose end, named Mara Harkiet. It's like a mysterious character, and then in book 2, it's like there's no mention. And then all of a sudden in book 3, he's comes back, very first chapter, the full story behind it and everything. It's very fascinating. And then another weird, I don't know if I'd call it weird, but a really cool connection is in Light Years chapters 6 through 13. It's changed to the first person, alternating between the two brothers, which are the main characters of that book. And it's first person between those two brothers, but you don't find out until book 3 that actually one of those two brothers wrote those chapters when he was in his 70s. So kind of interesting.
That is pretty interesting. I like
Yeah.
that. And now, who creates all the artwork for your books?
I create pretty much all the artwork.
Nice.
There are some elements that I license out or get permission to use, like on my latest book, Xenotrist. There's a wolf tattoo on the guy that's on the front cover. That I got permission to use from a tattoo artist from Russia named Rinat Tatarin.
That's pretty awesome.
And it's a pretty cool wolf tattoo. So I will be sending him a book soon. So yeah, I do it all. On the cover of Light Years trilogy, there's a picture of Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada, that we went to on vacation, and that made it onto the cover of that book.
Oh, awesome.
It's part of the moon that overlooks that planet. So.
Nice. And how do you come up with some of the names of characters and places?
Well, I use my imagination a lot. Like, for instance, the new book Xenotrist, it has a symphonic metal band in it, and the band's name is Maranatha. And if you take that name and flip it backwards, it's Padanaram without the P, which is an area of ancient Mesopotamia in Asia. So,
Pretty cool.
and then what's another name?
I remember you saying something about using your own name.
Oh,
in
yes,
a certain
yes.
way.
I use my name is in every book backwards as one of the characters. But with slight variations. Like Light Years trilogy, there's Ramu Yortis, which is the name backwards with IS at the end. He's a main character that's introduced in book 2, Light Years 2, Intergalactic Terrorism. In Treasures from Afar, it's Ramu Yort, which is without any variations, just straight backwards, which is a legendary poet in the book of poems that the main character carries in his back pocket. And the main character of Treasures from Afar is named Shane.
I like that.
And then in the latest one, Xenotrist, it's the bartender. His name is Ramuian Yort. So.
That's pretty clever. I like that. Now, how old were you when you wrote your first book?
15. Was the summer, I believe it was the summer of 1984, and I hand wrote Light Years a little bit of time as it came to me. I remember sitting in my grandparents' front yard of their cabin up north near Calva, Michigan, and writing a little bit at a time as it came to me. I think the following year is when I got my first typewriter. So.
Pretty sweet. And then out of all of your books, which one is your favorite that you've written?
That's a difficult question. I like them all the same. They all have their own unique thing. I would have to say my first book is probably my favorite because it's my first book, but I really have a special place for book 2 because I don't know, it just does something for me that, I don't know. Book 2 is pretty cool.
Book 2 from the Light Years trilogy?
Yeah, Light Years 2, Intergalactic Terrorism.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then, do you hear feedback from any of your readers?
You know, I've sold a lot of books. I have a few reviews, several reviews, not as many as I'd like. I don't hear much feedback. And I often wonder... I read an article about that recently, that people just they don't know what to say or whatever as far as a review goes. But It's kind of disappointing because I long to answer questions about my characters and the settings, and it just hopefully I'll get more of that as time goes on.
Definitely. Now, do you what audience do you mainly create your books for?
My books are written mostly pretty much primarily for adult audiences because of the mature content. It's either intended for mature audiences or specifically adult audiences in the case of Xenotrist because it's an erotic space opera. But yeah, definitely adult audiences.
And what is a common theme you usually end your stories with?
The entire trilogy, Light Years trilogy, the third book ends kind of with a wedding, without, I don't want to give spoilers, but
Yeah, no, spoiler alert. No.
And Treasures from Afar pretty much ends with a wedding. Xenotrist is a 2-book duology, so I'm not done with that story yet. The first book ends on a cliffhanger.
Ooh.
So that it's pretty suspenseful how that ends. Who knows? Maybe that'll end in a wedding.
That'd be funny. Now, in your blog post titled "Interesting Common Themes," you mentioned that your name is always used in the book backwards.
Yeah. There's other interesting
slightly.
common themes that are throughout the books. Like anytime I mention a bar, I call it an intoxication joint, just to be different. So that's interesting, and that's how I do it. The bars in the books. There's generally white pines throughout the stories, like because I love white pine trees, so they're always in my books. Or there's probably a wolf or two here or there. It's always on a galactic scale. But
very sweet. Now, where can readers find your blog and more details about your writing?
If people go to www.WymerNovels.com, they can find information about each of the novels, the blog post. I'm also on Goodreads, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Amazon, and many more. So.
Now, did you want to give any details about the Light Years trilogy that you wrote in particular?
I can. I'll just. Each of my books has a terminology index in the back. So, I mean, it basically tells what chapter the word first appears in. So, for instance, I could randomly pick something from, let's go to Light Years, the first one. Larson first appears in chapter 21. Larson just happens to be the brother of Syntos. Syntos is the owner of this ship, which is the Keen Saber. There's this technologically advanced people that are in the Cameron star system. And when Syntos is talking to his brother Larson on the moon of Sibtar, they're looking out into space, and they are looking at the planet Tibus, and they have the Keen Saber and 2 Star Knights flying by, and it shows the star system beyond and their destination, the Regulominus galaxies up there. So that is the depiction of the front cover of Light Years trilogy. And Larson is the guy he's talking to on that moon, his brother.
And would you describe the scene on Treasures from Afar? That looks pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. That is the ship Star Crystal. Shane is flying it, and he's going to visit his girlfriend Shanda on the planet Myrith. And little does he know that she's already been taken prisoner by an emperor, and he has to go rescue her. So he's got to go in the sail ship across a sea. That's part of his adventure on that planet.
Wasn't the sail ship named Ironclad?
Ironclad, I believe, is the captain's name. The ship itself is called the Maritime Maiden. And just a random thing out of here, Tiffin Saram Galaxy. So it first appears in chapter 2. That's the name of the galaxy that this story takes place in.
Now, do they travel to other galaxies, or is it pretty much the
No,
same stars?
that would be a Light Years trilogy.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple, 2 or 3 actually galaxies in that one
Okay.
that's mentioned. This one just
What
one.
what about star systems, or is it just
Oh,
one?
many.
Okay.
Many. In all of my space opera stories, there's going to be multiple star systems.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then, can you explain a little bit more about Xenotrust?
Xenotrist.
Trist.
Yep. I'll just randomly take a word from the back here. Dela appears in chapter 5. That is a moon of the planet Ulf Taruda. It's where their military base is located, and that is the seat of the government of the Xenolphins. And the leader that is head of the Xenolphins, whose name is Erinix Tuvalis, is quite a character. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but
Yeah.
let's just say he's not a very nice guy. So, yeah, that's... Oh, and the planet here on the front is Amaris. That's the snow planet where the Xenotrist takes place. And this is Eslar and Gathin, who are in a forbidden relationship because that Erinix Tuvalis leader that I had mentioned forbids the 2 species to be together.
Oh, and that's the tattoo you're talking about.
Yes, yep. The
That's
wolf
pretty
tattoo.
cool.
Rinit Tatarin, awesome tattoo artist from Russia. So yeah, those that's just a little bit about my books, and you can find out more on my website, WymerNovels.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to answer these questions, and I hope everyone gets a chance to check them out. They're on multiple... how can you get these books?
It's funny, I make the most profit, even though it doesn't cost the purchaser any different, on my own website, my bookshop page, right at WymerNovels.com. There's a link that actually goes off to BookBaby, where the e-commerce takes place. But for those who say, yeah, I'm stuck with I like Amazon, that's what I'm going to use, then I take about a smaller percentage, let's say.
Yeah.
But they're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks as an ebook.
Oh, sweet.
Kobo, Scribed.
Kindle?
That's Amazon.
Oh, okay, that
So,
makes sense.
yep. So paperback and ebook are available on Amazon. Right now, the Xenotrist is in a pre-sales mode until September 9th. And then it goes to normal.
Cool.
But it is available right now, not as a pre-sale on my website. So you order it now, you probably get it in 8 to 10 days.
Cool.
And I will be hosting a book launch party and some author events coming up soon. That can be checked out on the events page of my website. So yeah.
Cool. Keep us posted. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.